Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, CEO and founder of Alumni Direct, and we've set out to create a platform to help alumni network and connect through common bonds. So whether you're an alumni from a college, whether you're a Greek fraternity, sorority, business alumni association, or athletes, but what we're trying to do is to create content, different shows to help give value to these alumni. And we've created this show, Athletes to Entrepreneurs, to help athletes to teach and inspire that there is life after sports. There is major issues out there with athlete transition. And we're real excited today to have on Kasten and Kasten Spethman. And she does a lot of different things. So growing up, did a lot of sports, ice skating. She was a skier, diver. Then she got into professional windsurfing, which I'm sure all of you want to hear about. We will. Then she got into the venture capital world, which is great for companies that are growing and want to get that funding. And then now she is doing what I'm really excited about is Athletes to Entrepreneurs, which is all about kind of what we're talking about this show. So welcome to the show, Kasten. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks so much for having me. From the time we met, I have loved what you're doing. So it's really an honor to be here.
Oh, great. Thank you. We appreciate it. So I always start out with the easy one. Talk a little bit about, I mentioned some of those things in the beginning, but talk about playing sports growing up and just how it shaped you from your youth sports going into college and ultimately to professional sports.
So, what's kind of interesting about my early career in athletics is that I didn't do any team sports. It was all individual sports. So it was a little bit different. And sometimes I felt like I missed out because my friends were on softball or playing soccer or volleyball. And I was ice skating 7 days a week and skiing with my family on the weekend. So I would say, even though it wasn't a team sport, it definitely helped build my confidence. And I knew pretty early on that I was good at athletics. I was built for athletics. I had very good balance and coordination. And it sort of gave me a way to relieve stress, have some fun, and work at a goal of getting better at something.
Oh, that's great. I think any sport, like you said, whether it's team or individual, I mean, there's so much practice and preparation that goes in. And I've talked about this with some of these other athletes, just the time and the dedication. I can imagine skating, and I've seen some skating movies, just like you said, getting to the rink at like 4 or 5 in the morning, I'm sure, and things like that. But it does take a lot of dedication. And I imagine we'll get into it later talking about how that translates into the business world, but I'm sure that's a big thing. So did you have any aspirations of becoming a professional athlete growing up? And if so, maybe what sport or, what did you envision?
Yeah, so it wasn't anything cold. I've always been a fan of the sun. I was born and raised here in Portland, Oregon, and we don't have a lot of sun. And so I wanted to get out of here. So I really thought I was going to be a professional surfer. I was obsessed with surfing, and I just really wanted to surf. But the ocean here off the Oregon coast is very cold. So I didn't do much surfing and ended up doing windsurfing, which was not exactly the same, but it got me to the destinations I wanted to, and it got me out in the ocean. And it was, using my body against the board and learning just to read waves and go with, each wave is different. And then you have wind gusts that are different. And so I would say yes, it didn't end up being the sport that I wanted it to be, but I always knew I was good at athletics. So I figured I could do that. And the other thing is, I am very self-motivated. And so I had no problem getting out there and training and getting hurt and training and training. I'm still like that at 49. So it seemed like a very doable thing for me.
And I've watched it. It seems it's fun. Like I would never be able to do surfing. I don't think I'd never be able to do windsurfing either. Just the fact of standing up and balancing. I mean, it almost seems like if you have a sail, that it might not that it'd be easier, but at least you have that sense of like it's something there.
Yeah, because you actually have something to counterbalance you. When it's just you and a board, you don't. And so it is much harder to learning to surf is much harder. Once you learn how to read wind and adjust your sail accordingly, it's not that bad. But yeah, moving the board and keeping your balance and that sort of thing, it's pretty hard.
Yeah, I mean, my surfing experience was body surfing in New Jersey off the Jersey Shore. So, so now we're, let's talk a little bit about college and talk about some of your experiences there, and as we mentioned, all about alumni. What kind of interaction did you see? And even though you weren't playing sports collegiately, but ultimately you're in this world, do you see alumni being involved with athletes and more like alumni athletes maybe coming back
Yeah.
and working with other athletes?
No, it's a good point. So I went to a school that was huge in soccer. I went to University of Portland. We did not have football. We had baseball, we had um, soccer, and we had basketball. Um, and the soccer program was amazing. Like, we were the best in the country. And it was very interesting to watch how much the athletes from those sports were revered by the professors, by their peers, by the coaches, how they were sort of treated differently. And I figured out pretty quickly that the schools were definitely going to stay in touch with them and ask them to come back. And I think a lot of the credibility at the time that University of Portland had was their amazing soccer program. And that really helped draw students that weren't athletes. I mean, I know people who really want to go to the Ohio State because it's a football school. They're never gonna, they're girls, they're never gonna play football.
Sure.
Same here in University of Oregon, the Ducks, great football program, right? So people want to go there because it's a big part of the collegiate experience. It really is.
Yeah, no, I see that, and you're right. It's almost, I guess, in a sense, living vicariously maybe through some of these athletes, but it's
Well,
good that
it's more than that. It's more about having pride
spirit.
of your school, right? It's that team spirit, it's that school spirit. And you do really feel like, I know a guy who's a little bit older than I am, and he loves to tell people that he went to the Ohio State. I mean, it's just still he played baseball there, and it's such a big part of his, his past and his identity, and he's still proud of it. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? I love to tell people I went to University of Portland when Clive Charles was coaching men's and women's soccer team to national titles.
No, that's great, and you're right. It's kind of like one of the things that we're looking also with. I think to create that camaraderie and just there's that affinity relationship. I mean, I think a lot of times, regardless of what when you graduated, especially when you're far away from a school. So when you're far away from a school, you tend to meet somebody. Like for me, I went to University of Delaware. I live in South Florida, so it's a long way off. So when I meet a Delaware alumni, it's like, oh, hey, how can I help you? You have that feeling like you went to the same place, and maybe could be years apart, but the same bars,
Right.
restaurants, and all that. So yeah.
Well, and then to add to that, I would imagine, I don't know, how big the sports program was there, but if let's say somebody went to University of Oregon, didn't play a sport, but just went there, and now they live in Kentucky. Well, they get to watch their Ducks every Saturday during the fall, right? I mean, there's still that connection there. And so I think that sports draws the alumni back to their school, even if it's from thousands of miles away. They still root for they remember your roots, right? Like, root for the home team, even
Oh
if you live
yeah.
somewhere else and you have for a long time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's good to know that, it sounds like, they definitely encourage that alumni engagement and coming like people coming back on the soccer team and helping out. Like you said, doesn't have to be just the, soccer players. It could be, any the students at the university. So, and now because of this whole, like we're talking about athletes, entrepreneurs, do you see, was there a movement from the university itself to kind of help shape what people might do in their future? So, we all know that regardless of the sport, a lot of people don't make it to the professional level. So now you've got these athletes, and ultimately, some of them very young, whether it's, they get hurt or when they're done playing in college, now they go into the real world.
Yeah.
So do they do things at Portland as a university to kind of, or the athletic department to support and kind of teach them like, hey, here's what you do next? Or is it pretty much they're on their way?
Mm, I can't answer that with 100% certainty because I wasn't an athlete, and so I don't really know if they were encouraging more the academia side or, hey, what might you do? I can tell you from experience of me trying to speak at different universities that oftentimes the athletic director and or coach is not real thrilled about having somebody like me come in and talk to the students and starting to, throw statistics out there like, hey, less than 2% of you are ever going to make it to the pros. They want their students, and I think the bigger the school and the bigger the sports program, the worse it is, because those student athletes are there usually on a scholarship. They're there to make money for the school. Let's be honest.
Right.
That's what they're there for. And so they want them focused on their sport. And there is very little help getting them to understand anything beside the sport, focus on anything different. And I understand that. You have to be 100% committed and focused for the games that you're playing, that weekend, but also for your future. However, I think it's a disservice to an athlete, a student athlete, because they might be playing baseball and spend all their time at university, for their baseball program, and then they break a leg or blow out a knee or a shoulder their senior year, and there's no way they're going to the pros. Well,
Right.
then what? Right.
Yeah.
So it's a disservice, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think hopefully things will change, and that's I'm hoping to as a platform and a company to be able to do that and to help provide the different resources, companies like yours and other that can come in and help these athletes. And I think you're right. It's been all about kind of getting them to the. I listen to different podcasts and they talk about that. It's moving on, and they're there. They want to train them, and then when they're done, next. And but I
That
also
you are a cog in the wheel.
yeah, but I've started to see some movement. I've talked to some people where some of these schools are actually hiring people to maybe bridge that gap and to work with alumni, or at least like maybe bringing the alumni athletes back to work with the alumni, or not the alumni, with the current students. And that kind of transitions into the next question. And I mentioned to you before, is that tell me your thoughts on NIL, name, image, likeness, for folks that don't know what that is.
So I was thrilled when it passed. I knew that it would be a mess in the beginning. It would get worse before it got better. But it very much levels the playing field and takes some of the power out of the college's hands, because now you really control your own future a little bit more, right? And even though you can't maybe use the university's logo or any of their footage, your name is your name because you are a fantastic athlete and probably do a bunch of great things in your community, and you've built your name, right? So I think it's great that it passed. I think it's going to take a while for the rough edges to get smoothed out, because every university makes their own rules around it, their own parameters. And I've seen lots of businesses pop up that are now helping student athletes. And it's not just student athletes. I think that's the other thing that's kind of important for people to remember. If you play in the band, if you're a musician and you're a music major and you're studying French horn, you can go give instruction now and sign autographs, and the university can't take that money.
Oh, so you weren't able to do that either, huh? That was against like NCAA rules, or the college university rules.
If you got a scholarship, yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that it's fantastic experience for the student athletes that take advantage of it. And the reason I say that is because being a solo athlete, I really became an entrepreneur the second I wanted to become a professional athlete, because I had to go get my own sponsors. I had to pitch myself, sell myself. I had to manage my own money. I had to book my own flights, enter competitions, find housing. That was all stuff that I had to do, which is all leading you up to basically you are an entrepreneur. You're the CEO of your own life, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's great experience for these kids. I think there's going to be some missteps along the way, but anytime there's something new, that's going to happen. So I think it's a great opportunity. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I think is so cool about it is if you have a football team, Alabama or somebody like that, big football program, right? Texas, whatever. And the quarterback is pretty well known, and the wide receiver or the running back, right? I mean, they get all the glory. And then you've got a lineman who is so important. Otherwise, their quarterback's getting squished. But they don't get the, the rah.
Yeah.
And one of the very first NIL deals I heard about was a lineman from Alabama, I believe, who went to a local barbecue, a restaurant, and signed a sponsorship deal with them. It was perfect. He loved eating there. Big lineman. And he was autographs, which drew more people into the restaurant, right? And so he did a really good job. And would there be any other way for that lineman to really get that much publicity and money? Not necessarily, right?
No.
I mean, it's the quarterbacks getting the car deal. Let's just be honest. So I do think it levels the playing field a little bit, and it's about selling yourself and promoting yourself. So good on you. And, that's what entrepreneurs do.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's interesting. You're talking about the linemen. One of the things that we're trying to do is, we're creating what's called Athletes Corner, and within that, to give the opportunity for whether it's a college athlete or an alumni athlete to promote themselves. But the difference being, like you were saying, if you went to a smaller school or even a bigger school and you're a different sport, a lot of people in the general public don't know them, but the alumni would. And that's the kind of thing that we want to do, is promote that relationship where, I was the lineman, or I played basketball, or I was a swimmer, but people know my name because, at that smaller school, or I mean, it could be a big school.
Very
too,
true.
Yeah.
So really
great.
good point. Yeah.
And the other thing that was, I was, I've been asking the same question, talking to different athletes. I was talking to one guy, former NFL player, and he thinks it's great, but his only concern is that, and this could go for any young person, but you have these younger athletes or young people that really don't know how to manage money. They don't understand they got to pay taxes and things like that. And that's his biggest concern. I mean, obviously he wishes it was there when he was there, and he likes it and likes the fact that people can get it, but his only concern has to do more is that maybe there needs to be more education and help to these
without question,
students.
There should be massive education around it. And you know what, we're doing a disservice, because when I was in high school, I had personal finance class. I knew I had to pay taxes. I knew how credit cards work. I knew how to balance a checkbook. They don't even teach that anymore.
No.
So we absolutely need to be teaching some of the fundamentals and basics from grade school on. I mean, this is ridiculous. And that's an age-old problem, because somebody gets drafted into the NBA or Major League Baseball, and they're making $13 million their first year, and they're 20 years old.
Yeah.
There's no difference. They don't have the education either. So that is an age-old problem that has to be fixed without question.
Yeah, and like I've been, I've talked to some sports agents too, and everybody's different on the sports agents too. I'm sure, just like anything, there's good ones, bad ones, but the ones that have I got attracted to, that in talking to the ones that talk about how when they get the athlete, let's say an NFL player, and they get them in college, they're not only looking at, okay, well, great, you got this big contract, but what do you want to do when you're not playing football anymore? And I think that's great. I mean, for more people to take an active role and to help them along the way. So this whole big problem that we'll talk about next, athlete transition and all the problems that's causing, that would be a great solution, is to be able to have, mentors and people that can guide them along and just show them, the things that they can do in the future. Because, sports life is short. I mean, I was talking to one college coach, he was saying, he implores his players, like, listen, you gotta take this seriously, your education, all that, because you only 0.00001% of the people like become stars in their profession, in
Right.
sports. So
And even sometimes the people that do really well still have to work after that. If you're
right.
sorry, but your shelf life as a football player is 6 years.
Yeah.
Okay, now you're 29. Woo! Now what you know what I mean? So
Yeah. No, you got a
you're not
long,
going to sit around the rest of your life.
yeah, you got a long way ahead of you. I mean, some people have
Yeah.
30, 40, 50, 60 years of life still that they need to figure something
I
out.
I would like to see I'd like to see professional sporting leagues set up programs for their players that bring in people like me, people like you, that share with them what the resources are out there, offer services, because they don't. There's, I mean, at least not in the NFL. I have more friends in the NFL than the other sports, so all I can tell you is like from what I know from them. And there's no transition. The Olympics is the worst. There's nothing for them, and they have trained 4 years to run 15 seconds, and if they're out, they're out. And then what? So it needs to come from the organizations. And people argue with me like, well, there's no money in that. I'm like, okay, well, if there always has to be money involved, then we're not going to get very far as a society.
Well, it's interesting. One of the guys out on the show played football in college, and when you hear his story, he's got a podcast and all. He just talks about how tough his transition was. Here he was a star athlete. Now he went home and he's living with mom and dad again, childhood room, and just and the struggles. And he got through all that. And now he's an athlete transition coach. And what he talks about is in his business, he's been able to get sponsors that basically the sponsors are the one that are paying him. And so the athletes
Yeah.
are getting his services for free. And it's
Yeah.
great because what you just, the perfect point you just said is that it's a shame. We need to find ways to help them. I mean, even like, I
Yeah.
mean, not to, equate the two, but even military, same thing. I mean, these men and women that went out and served our country and they come back and they've got all these years of life left, is that we need to be, providing services to help them out.
Absolutely. And I know that most of the owners that own Major League Baseball teams, and I know the owner of the Portland Timbers here, the soccer team, they have enormous amounts of money. It wouldn't cost that much to bring in some resources for these players.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's talk about.
Otherwise, the players are just an asset. They're just an asset the whole time. That's anyway. Yeah, we could talk about that all day.
So talk about the transition for you. So it sounds like you're already on your entrepreneurial journey when you were a professional windsurfer, but once you were done, talk about now all those hours and the preparation, the practice, all these things that led up to that from your younger years all the way through. What did you do after that, and how did you make that transition ultimately to becoming the successful entrepreneur that you are?
So sadly, I didn't recognize that I had been an entrepreneur all along. I had no idea, which is one of the reasons I do what I do now. So I struggled, and there are things that you don't even think about what you're going to struggle with. But I had a massive identity crisis. Like, my parents were always really proud to introduce me as, their daughter who's this professional windsurfer. Well, now what? How do they introduce me, right? Who am I now? Who am I now that I'm not on the cover of Windsurfing magazine as the woman who windsurfs with her dog? Like, who am I? I missed the constant travel. I don't know that people think about that, but when you are an athlete, I don't really care what sport you play. I mean, tennis, golf, whatever, you're constantly traveling, constantly. And it is an abrupt, harsh stop when you're done and you're just in your town and you're used to having new stimuli and getting ready for the next place, and that is gone. And that was really hard for me as well. So I floundered. I was depressed. I chose to retire. So it wasn't like, you just don't make very much money as a professional windsurfer. So I knew I couldn't do that forever. So I chose to retire, but um, it was really hard time trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I had studied, so I worked at Nike here in Portland, and quit that job to go windsurfing. And I knew I wasn't wired for corporate America. That was not going to be my gig. And so here I am with this degree in psychology and recording arts. And I'd studied, how sound would help athletic performance. What do you do with that? You could go to Hollywood, I guess, and work in movies. Um, but so here I am, very lost. And on accident, I sort of fell into the world of venture capital, and found that I was really good at it. And I do credit the fact that I did have to go out and hustle to get my own sponsors, to get myself to the next destination, to get myself, interviewed for a magazine or whatever it was. I do credit that because I learned how to go after it myself and not be afraid, because I was told no plenty of times, when I was windsurfing. And so being told no in the BC world was easy peasy. So I was very thankful that I found that, not that it was ever my plan, but I was good at it. And so I started to gain my confidence back. And I will tell you, so this is kind of an odd thing, and I didn't even ever vocalize it until I was on a Clubhouse room about a year and a half ago. And I realized that one of the things that I loved about pitching business ideas to investors was that I got to be basically on stage. I got to have the spotlight. So if you're used to being on a podium, hoisting a trophy, you miss that. You miss the rush. And I think one of the things I liked about venture capital was it was hard. I mean, I was 29 years old, a female who'd never taken a finance class, and it was hard. And I loved that it was hard. I loved that I was in a male-dominated industry, similar to the one I had just left, right? And I loved being in front of people. I loved winning that deal and getting that investment money. So I had never even made that correlation until many, many years later. But that was a big chunk of what was missing in my life after retirement.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, just going through all that. So before I get into kind of what you're doing today, what kind of advice, and you already kind of gave some just in what you're saying, but what kind of advice would you give to these athletes, going through it yourself, of like, okay, it's done now, but it's not done. I mean, it's okay. You're going on to something else. Like, give them advice on what, how they can get out of it quickly, utilizing the skill sets they have, and then ultimately, finding whether it's entrepreneurial or business success, whatever it might be.
Whatever it is. So a couple things. One of the things that I try to reword it to being, here's the next chapter in your book, and the book is your life.
That's good.
So this is just another chapter, and you get to write this chapter. Just like you wrote the last chapter, now you're getting to write another chapter, and that can be very exciting. So it's spinning it to be a little bit more of like, oh, you're not good enough to be a professional athlete anymore, you're too old, or you got injured, or whatever. It more of the positive. This is the next chapter, and I'm about to write it. Another analogy would be, I think there's something missing, that you have more to give the world aside from your athletic abilities. And so I actually give this to my entrepreneurial clients more. When you have a company that fails, you're still an entrepreneur. And so you go out and you do another one. Similar to Tom Cruise is an actor, right? And he does some movies that are great, like Top Gun. And then he does some movies that are pretty cheesy, like Cocktail, right?
Yeah.
And so, but he's still an actor. And so thinking about each business as a movie, or each chapter in your life, like, hey, in this movie, you were an athlete, but you're still a human being who, has feelings and is strong and motivated and intelligent and worldly and all those things. So in this movie, you were an athlete. What do you want to be in your next movie? Because again, you get to create it. Now, for the tactical side of figuring out what that is, I have people. So if I'm working with an athlete that really doesn't know what they want, maybe they think they want to be an entrepreneur, but they don't even know. I tell them, I want you to think about things that are interesting to you. Maybe it's ocean conservancy. Maybe it's music. Maybe it's fashion. Maybe it's whatever it is. And I want you to find podcasts that are specific to that industry or that thing and listen to it and read some books about it and see how you feel about that. Does that get you excited? Do you want to learn more about that? And if you do, then go find somebody who is successful in that industry and shadow them for a while. Shadow them, go to work with them. Because it's not just about what you're going to do, it's about what your lifestyle is going to be like. You could go back to school and become a teacher so that you have summers off. That's the lifestyle that you want. If you want to be jet setting around the world and buying fabric from all over because you're a garment producer now, that's a lifestyle, right? So I try to tell them, not everybody could have been a professional golfer because they couldn't have handled the travel schedule, right? That's a lifestyle. And that is going to be the same in your next chapter or your next movie. So go shadow people, ask what they would do different, ask what made them excited to get in that industry, and see, what you come up with. And it's very exploratory, so there's no pressure. And then if they do, really want to pursue the entrepreneurial side, my whole goal is that I want to be there that says, hey, I don't know if anyone's ever explained this to you or made this correlation for you, but the fact that you have been this competitive athlete for so long, really, you have built up a skill set that is perfect for the world of entrepreneurship. In fact, it's a skill set that's very, very hard to teach later in life, but you already have it. So you're like 6 steps ahead already. And then there's the tactical side of how do you write a business plan? How do you pitch an investor? How do you, do your spreadsheets? How do you find a manufacturer? When do you hire an attorney? That's tactical. I can teach you that all day long. But if any of that is of interest to you, then I would say pursue it. But I just want to be the person that's there in the beginning. This is why I go to colleges and speak, because I want those people to know, hey, did you know that the fact that you were willing to sacrifice your Friday nights, you didn't go to parties because you had a game the next day.
Yeah.
You're willing to sacrifice to meet your goal. You started playing your sport at 7, 8 years old, and then you had to play all through college, or at least to get into college. So you played 10 years. Not many people in this day and age are willing to do something for 10 years to achieve their goal, right?
Right.
How many times did you get injured, lose a competition, lose a match, lose a game, get benched, get traded, and if you lost a game on a Wednesday night, what were you doing on Thursday? You're back in the gym. You're back in the pool. You were back on the greens, right? And that tenacity is almost impossible to teach later in life. So,
I mean,
yeah.
So I'm signed up. Let's sign up for Kasten. But no, that's great stuff, and I think you pretty much probably talk a lot about what you're doing today, and it's very interesting, and I like that. I mean, definitely want to hear more on just the college side and how you're speaking to people. It's this has been great. I've really enjoyed this. So tell people how they can find you. This is your commercial now. I always say that.
My commercial. Yeah, so it's pretty easy. My website is Your Startup Life. That's it, yourstartuplife.com. And that gets you to my website and my blog. And, you can find me on social media. My social media is not Your Startup Life. My social media is all my name, which is an odd name. So just look Kasten Spethman. Go on LinkedIn. I'm the only Kasten Spethman in the world. So it's pretty easy to find that way. And otherwise, just Your Startup Life. I mean, that's pretty simple. And I try to make my services available to meet the need. And the reason I say that is if a small university in Forest Grove, Oregon says, we'd really love you to come and talk to our student athletes, I'm going to go talk to their student athletes. I'm not going to charge them, right? They don't have a budget for that. You know, if Columbia asks me to come speak, I might charge them, right?
Sure.
But, you know, let's be realistic. If my goal is to really help these people, and you got to give a lot to get in return. And I want, for instance, I did speak at this small university in Forest Grove, Oregon. And one of the basketball players in the audience graduated, I know, 3 months later, started a company. It has now been 2 years, and hires me now to help him.
That's fantastic. That's rewarding. I mean, that's one thing. I did a lot of coaching in youth sports, and I remember just talking to other coaches and how it was important that years later, some of these kids that they coached just came
Yeah.
back and thanked him, and just had a dramatic impact on their life. So that's awesome. And I definitely encourage people to follow you. We'll put it in the show notes as well. And to find us, it's alumnidirect.com. We're on all the social media. You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we really want to make a difference. I mean, we want to help to facilitate this whole helping alumni connect regardless of what type of alum they are, but also providing content like this show, because we do want to like I said, teach and inspire athletes. So thank you so much for sharing this with us.
I just want to add one thing, Rob,
Sure.
If you don't mind, that
Absolutely.
I think is so important that we haven't talked about, and that is the epidemic of student athletes committing suicide.
Yes.
And I am not in their brain, but I can imagine some of what's going on there, which is the pressure that they have to succeed and to perform for their university, but also what is their life going to be like afterwards? What if they don't win the championship and they don't get drafted? And I think that's where the alumni element can really, really help. Because if you have student athletes and you have alumni, meaning student athlete alumni,
right,
that can come in and talk to them so they can see there is life after sports, good life, really good life, and that they're not defined just by the sport that they play or the jersey that they wear. I really think that could cut down on what is becoming a very sad epidemic.
Yeah, I agree. And that's, that's, again, the more I read about it, hear about it, talk to people about it, that it's becoming a real passion for me to try to help that, because it is a major problem. So thank you again. We're definitely going to continue to carry on this conversation, and I enjoyed it. Everybody have a great night.
Thank you.